There is factual information that you can hunt down, but you have to basically sort out the proverbial wheat from the chaff and try and lock down what is hard evidence, what is fact, and to listen to the people that were there who experienced things, who contradict what the mainstream story is. Welcome to the Wasp Files. Some of this material may be distressing, and viewer discretion is advised. We live in hope. The cynical side of me says never, because if something as heinous as this crime involved other parties and had some form of agenda, then there is no way in God's green earth that they would allow the truth ever to come out. You could argue that that could be a reason why all of the hard evidence has been so severely restricted. The way I understand the obfuscation of information works is that, because people often claim, how could so many people on such a major event not know that this was a setup? The easiest answer to that is that if you compartmentalise information, if one party over here only gets this much information and another party over there gets this much information, and these people that were involved and these people were there, but there's a disconnect between those compartments, then they only have a limited viewpoint of their perspective on that experience. So no one gets an overview of the actual event itself and how it all links up. The researchers, people who've written books and people who've studied Port Arthur as I have, make an attempt to make a connection between those compartments. And that's where they come up with these discrepancies, with the anomalies, with the legal improprieties, which are factually on record, the witness statements that don't add up, the witnesses that say the shooter who I knew Martin Bryant was not Martin Bryant. Once you start to make those connections, the picture becomes clearer, the overall picture becomes clearer, the truth starts to emerge. But part of labelling people conspiracy theorists is they layer over the top of any sort of factual connection or compartment all kinds of crazy a patina of lunacy, if you like, so that after a while you've got crackpot people saying, nobody died at Port Arthur and it was Mossad and it was aliens and whatever else. Whether that's engineered or not, it creates a morass of confusion. You can't differentiate what's real from what isn't. There is factual information that you can hunt down, but you have to basically sort out the proverbial wheat from the chaff and try and lock down what is hard evidence, what is fact, and to listen to the people that were there who experienced things, who contradict what the mainstream story is. Will the truth ever come out? I hope so. I believe that one of the only ways that will happen is if that somebody who is in the know, perhaps close to their deathbed, confesses, comes forward and says, look, I've got evidence, I was there, this is actually what happened. It's not how the mainstream media or the authorities called it. So if somebody was to come forward, and I highly encourage anyone with that kind of information to do so, and anyone out there who is also following in my footsteps to research, we need hard evidence. It's not enough just to make accusations or we can discuss and have hearsay. To find the truth, we need as hard evidence as we can. And hopefully the authorities will support that notion. Those two terms, which are bandied about quite often by the media and the powers that be, have a distinctive negative connotation attached to them, particularly the later one. if someone says you're a tinfoil hat wearer, that generally applies to people that have grandiose delusions and in some cases severe schizophrenia, who wear a tinfoil hat to stop alien signals from being beamed into their heads. So it's quite an arrogant and obnoxious way to apply to anyone that wants to question an event or something major. With regards to conspiracy theorist, that term was bandied about as well and was originated in the 1900s. But since then it's been used at pivotal points in major events in history by the authorities to discredit anyone that questions the determinations of an event. One of the most notable of these was the John F. Kennedy assassination. The Warren Commission issued their report basically stating that the shooter was the lone gunman in the book depository and that there was no conspiracy by any other parties involved in that assassination. Anyone who's read the Warren report will find that it's full of holes, not the least of which is the magic bullet theory, where one bullet went through Kennedy, through his back, came out his throat, went into his arm, came out there, turned right angles at 90 degrees, went into someone else's arm, went out, and then ended up as a pristine bullet on the trolley when Kennedy was brought into the hospital. So people basically, for the same reason to this day, are questioning the Kennedy assassination, and the authorities basically ridiculed them and labelled them as conspiracy theorists trying to shut down the mainstream. My answer to people that call me a conspiracy theorist or a tinfoil hat wearer is there is nothing wrong with asking questions, particularly in the absence of information as there is with Port Arthur. I was always brought up to question things, not to blindly accept what's been put in front of me, to accept that there is always two sides to a story. And particularly if there's an event of this magnitude, such as Port Arthur, which affected everyone in Australia, not just the people in Tasmania or the powers that be. It was a major pivotal point in our history. And to not have answers about that, to research it and find that you can't get access to the information, basically just makes people want to question. And the moment they put their hand up and ask a question, they are ridiculed and called, in essence, labelled as nutcases. When I started my intended project on Port Arthur, all I knew was what the public knew, which was that a young man had gone in there with some assault rifles or semi-automatic rifles and had massacred a lot of people. But as my job as writer and producer, I started to research the crime and the circumstances of the tragedy. The deeper I got, and I dug very deeply, deeper than most. I didn't just listen to what I'd read on social media, some of the material out there or some of the written material. I spoke firsthand with some of the victims who survived, their families, the friends, the first responders, the police that were directly involved, people that knew Martin Bryant, that grew up with him, that went to school with him, people that spent time with him in prison after the event. I dug very, very deeply. I spoke to police, I spoke to military people, I spoke to politicians. The deeper I dug, the more I discovered that the mainstream story just doesn't add up, that there are too many problems with it, too many unresolved questions. And all I wanted was answers, and I came under severe attack. I was unofficially warned off by authoritative figures to leave it alone. I've had death threats over the course of my intentions to make a film about Port Arthur, and I'm still struggling to this day to try and get the answers to the questions that I posed. I wanted to talk to Martin Bryant. I wrote to the prison. I went through the proper procedures. I was denied access. My letter to Martin was seized as a risk to prison security. He hadn't even seen it, and I was denied access without even formally applying. So I was shut down, as many people are. I have some good friends that were survivors from Port Arthur on the day. They are very angry. And they don't feel like conspiracy theorists. They feel like they were pushed aside and that their rights were just ignored, that their pain was ignored. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Wasp Files. Feel free to share far and wide and see the attached files in support of the episode. Thank you.